Good boy. I am so glad that God has brought you to this Synod Assembly. Whether you're here in person on the floor, watching in real time on the live stream, catching up on the plenaries on YouTube in comfy pants or in the middle of a 5-mile run, or even discovered this years later as part of a technological time capsule. This is a thrilling and exciting time to be a Lutheran Christian as we discover anew what it means to be missionaries and evangelists, inviters of others into the life of faith. If I were to hand you my business card or zap you my contact details on my phone, it would indeed read as Bishop Forrest described, Executive Associate of the Bishop for Leadership. Because that's a lot to say in a very small space, when I get asked, well, what all do you do? I sometimes respond that I am the CDO. The what? The CDO. Wait, I've heard of CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, Chief Information or Innovation Officers, or COOs, Chief Operations Officer, but what in the world is a CDO? Chief Difficult Officer? Chief Dictator Officer? Chief Dog Officer? After all, I do have Chipotle. Chief Dessert Officer? Well, a CDO is the Chief Disappointment Officer. Yes, we hear the chuckles, and it's indeed true. The Chief Disappointment Officer. Because I often deliver a picture and dose of church life in 2023 that while it reflects reality, radically disappoints people. Because the story that I bring abrades the story that most people and congregations tell themselves out of a basic human need for self-preservation and perpetuation. Because perhaps the last time a congregation went through the call process, there were multiple candidates just waiting for the opportunity for a new call. Because perhaps the last time another congregation went through a difficult time, there were multiple program staff at the Synod office to rely on. And now the reality of cutting mission support has noticeable effects. Because gaining strength is not analogous to gaining independence. Because United Lutheran Seminary, the Philadelphia and Gettysburg campuses graduated 23 MDiv students 10 days ago. Because those graduates may not act like, sound like, look like, or hold to a worldview that we expected our rostered ministers in the past to hold to. Because we have 17 people in our candidacy process, discerning calls to public ministry. Because we received about half the rostered minister profiles in 2022 as we did in 2016, because the average congregation's worship attendance is down 30% from before COVID. And if you're squirming a bit in your seat right now, you're in solidarity with your neighbor across the table. So the chief disappointment officer description certainly fits. After all this, why even stick around? Why not head straight for that door and not turn back? Because that's where growth happens. In a framework known as adaptive leadership, Heifetz and Linsky sometimes define leadership as disappointing people at a rate they can handle. Put too much on people too fast and they shut down, acting like a threatened turtle, pulling in their head and limbs inside their shell while they wait immobile for the danger to pass. Disappoint people too little and they have no reason to change. Things are fine just the way they are. Or if not fine, then at least tolerable enough so that we haven't hit the action threshold. So we'll just keep it on until something like a pastor leaving or a matriarch dying pushes us into action. Pastor Louise Johnson is the operations director of the ELCA. She's a former seminary president and a consultant with Lead Ministries. Many of our ELCA's efforts to grow younger and more diverse have her fingerprints on them. At a keynote presentation she gave at the Generosity and Vitality event this past January, she also offered this alternative definition of adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership is the practice of mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges and thrive. So let's stay with this for a minute or two. It's a practice, which means that everyone can participate and everyone can try. Practice also means something you endeavor to do more than once, where you can learn from each attempt and make notice of what you would want to try differently next time. So it's a practice. And it's a practice of mobilizing people through tough challenges. Yep. These are times with no simple answers, quick fixes, a pill, or a program. And if it were easy, we would have done it already. So what's the end goal? Thriving. Thriving means growing into the people God would have us be, living our baptismal calling to be the people of God in the world in order that everyone may experience God's love in Jesus Christ through the power of the Spirit. In John 14, Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. Jesus is about to, in a few short chapters, sorely disappoint his followers. Rather than preserving his life, he's going to lose it. And in dying, Christ ushers in the eternal age, life in the kingdom that begins now. So to thrive is to be connected to the way, the truth, the life, Jesus Christ. And it is only in, through, and because we can work through our disappointment to courage. Courage to move beyond the false hope of one pastor, one congregation, as if our security is based on our own effort or strength. By trusting in Christ's strength, we see the ways that God is already calling us into something new. Last year, Bishop DeForest laid out a vision of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Synod being the most deacon-friendly synod in the ELCA. Later on in this assembly, you will have the opportunity to affirm compensation guidelines, which take a concrete step toward that goal. To help ward against burnout, despair, and indifference, especially in this age when we're all transforming, we will also be voting on updated sabbatical guidelines. We need healthy, nimble, and adaptive leaders to accompany congregations in this missionary age. And healthy leaders and healthy worshiping communities nurture future public ministers. As youth and young adults see that a life of ministry can be generative and rewarding. Of the 17 previously mentioned people in the candidacy process, from the very beginning of an initial phone call through approval, 9 have submitted their applications in the past 2 years. Our website speaks to rostered ministers outside our synod who are taken with the 3-lane vision of growing young, gaining strength, and going beyond death to life. People resonate with our emphases of healing the hurt, loving the land, and engaging the stranger. For sure, it takes courage, intestinal fortitude, and Christ-centered vision to double the shared worshiping communities across our synod. Communities about proclaiming the life, death, and resurrection to troubled hearts. Hearts who long to experience the grace and mercy of the one who calls them to tackle tough challenges and thrive. I know we will get there because of what God has done, is doing, and will continue to do. So at this assembly, open yourself up to experiencing something new, of seeing something from someone else's perspective, for committing to being curious and interested. Above all, do not let your hearts be troubled. Thank you.